But we know this year's Hanukkah is different. It's been 65 years since the deadliest day of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. 65 years.
That was US President Joe Biden declaring that it has been 65 years since the deadliest day of the Jewish people since the Holocaust. And you heard him there saying years, not once, but twice. What the president meant to say was days, not years, not months, not weeks, but days. Because as we all know, it has been 65 days since Hamas terrorists launched its surprise attack on Israel on October 7, killing more than 1,200 people and taking more than 200 people hostage. While thousands of families are grieving, more than 100 hostages are still being held in captivity by Hamas, and the war between Israel and Hamas is raging on, the 81-year-old president of the United States couldn't get such an obvious and important fact right, which I would imagine would be very hard for anyone to watch who belongs to the Jewish faith, who has friends or relatives that were innocent victims in the terror attack, because it was 65 days ago that their lives changed forever. And October 7, 2023 will forever be remembered as a dark day in Israel's history. Meanwhile, the president is being criticised again today for giving a rambling speech, this time for again telling a story about the time a minor fire occurred at his Delaware home.
So today, he looked totally, completely, utterly confused, confounded, unsure of his surroundings yet again at an event in Philly. During his brief remarks, Biden failed to address the most pressing issues of our time and instead filled time with one of his very favorite tall tales about his wife, a house fire, and his beloved Corvette. You know, the one that was next to all the top secret classified documents, but they didn't raid his house. Take a look.
It also saved my home and my wife's life. When I was away, it was the last day that the most famous guy doing Meet the Press in Washington, D.C., and I was doing the program. And what happened was there was a lightning struck a little pond behind my house, hit a wire, came up through the basement of my home, and 3 stories, and the smoke literally ended up being that thick, literally that thick. You've seen it, you guys have seen it. I wasn't there, and my wife was there, and my dog and my cat, and my '67 Corvette. But all kidding aside, they saved my wife. Got her out, saved my home.
Now, according to authorities, the fire was tiny. It was very small. It was contained to the kitchen. It was put out almost immediately without any injuries, minimal damage to the house. But that has not stopped Joe Biden from telling that rambling, embellished version of that story now, dozens of times since taking office. But it gets even worse.
Returning to the situation in the Middle East, the United Nations has described the situation in Gaza as catastrophic as Israel's ground assault intensifies. Aid agencies are warning their ability to provide basic supplies is reaching its limit.
Only a fraction of aid's getting through to Gaza, and this truck, moving at speed, appeared to have men on top guarding it. At least one of them is armed. But this is sustenance, and it's in scarce supply. People are hungry, thirsty, and desperate. This is a fight for drinking water, nothing more. The alarms from the aid organisations are getting more loud and more shrill, but still no breakthrough yet on any ceasefire or peace plan. Those tasked with saving lives in these conditions say simply it's becoming near impossible.
We are also close to a breaking point because the more the level of desperation increases, the more people are also expressing and channeling their anger against the UN and against UNRWA, which is the face of the international community.
There are yet more horribly familiar scenes of frightened families on the run. These, filmed by the Sky News team in the north of Gaza, suggest there are still significant numbers in an area under intense bombardment for weeks now. And the sounds of war indicate Hamas is still fighting. But Israel's emboldened by its latest show of support from the US, which has led to the lack of political consensus at the UN, so the killings go on. About 40 bodies were brought into Al-Aqsa hospital, many from a strike which flattened a building in the Maghazi refugee camp. About 80 people were inside when the bomb struck. Neighbours counted only 6 survived. We joined an unprecedented trip with UN envoys from the Security Council to the Egyptian Gaza border. The group of diplomats was taken to see the lines of urgently needed aid trucks waiting to be taken into Gaza. The hastily organised tour by the UAE is aimed at getting more aid across the border and stopping the bombing. But Israel's key backer, America, was one of the few who didn't join the field trip, amid signs of growing exasperation from their UN colleagues.
So this is really a tragic event, not only for the Palestinian people, but for humanity, for the whole world. We should not allow it to continue. It has been too long.
The UAE has opened a field hospital in Gaza and had wanted to take the diplomats over, but security issues meant they had to make do with talking to medics inside the war zone remotely. This trip was all about galvanizing minds, prompting fresh action and demonstrating what can be done. The UAE opened a desalination plant, which they hope will provide fresh water for Gazans, for instance. But it also served to show how America is being isolated over this war.
This is a code red. It is a code red. We have been sounding the alarm. The Secretary General has written a letter to the Security Council invoking Article 99, that this is a threat to international peace and security. We are at code red here. So if the international community does not respond at the speed and pace that is required, we are going to be facing an even more enormous challenge.
The UN envoys could see and probably hear the war happening over the border, and it won't have been lost on them how throughout the debating there are still more than 100 hostages and lives are being snuffed out in Gaza with every day that passes. Lots and lots of them. Alex Crawford, Sky News, on the Egyptian Gaza border.